Hello and welcome into the Den. I'm sports information intern Kai Chen Chisholm. This is a brand new podcast for FMU athletics. We're going to learn about teams, coaches, players, and more all across sports here at Florida Memorial. Joining me today for the inaugural episode is the head coach of men's soccer, Connor Campbell. Coach, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's I guess finally because I was waiting on my equipment and then finally able to get going and we had some I guess preliminary talks on Tuesday
Yeah, yeah.
with everything. So finally getting everything underway and then also getting the podcast, this is like my bread and butter. So this is stuff that is good for me. Um Before we get into anything, if you can introduce yourself just for anyone who might not know you.
Yeah, so my name's Connor Campbell. I'm the head coach, like you mentioned, of the men's soccer team at Florida Memorial University. I was hired in December after coming from a school up in Ohio called Cincinnati Christian University, where I'd been for a couple years, was able to help them improve, get to playoffs. And then unfortunately, the school shut down in December. So I like to say that I fell upward into Miami and glad to be here since then.
Fell upward into Miami. It's how have you liked I didn't even get the chance to ask you this the other day. How have you liked living in Miami and the crazy up and down weather?
Yeah, I mean, it's been strange just because I only had a couple months before COVID stuff hit. So I moved here also with the women's coach Logan Langseth. We were both fortunate enough to have worked together at our previous university, CCU, and get hired here. So it's nice to have some of that
Right.
from the past. But for both of us, like we wanted to go out, we wanted to get used to the city so we could speak from experience to our recruits as well. And we had a little bit of time to do that, but our heads were to the grindstone because we were just trying to get used to our new teams, and then COVID hit. So, as much as we can say, I think that both of us have really enjoyed it. We like being here. I'm a little bit of a homebody, but have definitely enjoyed the places that I've been able to go to, the beaches, different restaurants to whatever degree is possible at this time. But a little different than Ohio, a little different than Oregon, where I was originally from. But definitely glad to be here.
Yeah, it's the bigger I what I've told people, and it's like people who live outside of state who have never been to, or they visit Miami but they don't know, like they think Miami is like Miami Beach and then that's it. And it's like, well, once you come here, you can realize that, you can go anywhere and within 5 minutes you're in completely different communities and it's just bouncing back and forth everywhere. And then there's like Miami Beach and that's where all like the tourism and glitz and glamour comes from.
Yeah. Yeah,
But it's
it reminds me of Portland in some ways, oddly enough, in terms of just like what you were just saying of you can drive 5 minutes one direction, 5 minutes a different direction, and it feels like you're in a completely different city. And
right.
especially with this city in particular being in the location it is, we got people from all over the world. So it's a pretty cool place to be for sure.
I had to ask because you said that you've been to a few restaurants. And I think I asked Logan this as well. Have you been to Flanagan's yet?
I can't remember the exact name of what I ordered, but it was like spicy or Cajun chicken pasta type thing, and uh, definitely two thumbs up from me.
So you didn't get the full rack of ribs.
I didn't, not yet.
You
That's
have
next.
to. It's Flanagan's, and I guess have you had a chicken tender sub from Publix? That's the other
I
one.
haven't. I've gotten criticized for that as well.
Yeah, those are like I guess the two Miami staples in a way. Is you have to go Flanagan's and you gotta get a chicken tender sub. Um, Before we get into more with I guess Flora Memorial and things that are going on here, I mentioned to you before we started that I wanted to kind of ask you your opinions on Messi, just because this is about soccer in general, and Messi is one of those huge names. I know Tuesday you congratulated me for Bayern winning the Champions League, and it feels like just in general, like that's where kind of the celebration stopped because now Messi is
He's
just
stealing your thunder.
yeah, he's doing the entire soccer world, and it's just where is he going to go next? The reports coming that he's going to go to Man City for 3 years and then come down to New York City FC. Who knows if that's true? But how do you feel with him leaving essentially like his home?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see him consider that next stage of his career because there's been rumors in the past before he's re-upped other contracts, but this one seems like it makes more sense just because that crew with Barcelona that he achieved so much success with, a lot of them have transitioned out or are just simply getting older. and Man City could use some help, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge Guardiola fan. I just think he's a creative genius. I do think that, like myself at times, he can overthink things. But I'm a huge fan of his, and I would love to see what he can do with Messi. I don't think they necessarily need a massive amount of help over there, but it'd be cool to see what would happen if he went there, to see how Liverpool responds.
Yeah. It looks like they might try to grab Thiago from Bayern, although
Hmm.
Karl-Heinz Rummenigge has said that he hasn't been contacted yet by Liverpool, so who knows if that's going to happen. But of course, it's soccer, it's Liverpool, it's Bayern. There's something might happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
You mentioned that the overthinking with his like Pep style, and then how you said you do it sometimes as well.
Hmm.
I asked Logan this, and he told me that he's always wanted to be the best, and so that he never had like that person that he looked to, but he did say that like, he likes Klopp. Do you have like when you were kind of getting into the coaching system, was there that guy that you're like, this is the guy that I want to model my coaching after?
I didn't have anyone specific because for me, I did not really get to watch international soccer, like in terms of international teams as well as international club soccer in Europe growing up. And so I follow stuff online as much as I can. But when I really started coaching, I was trying to draw from my own experiences as a player and try to take the good from the coaches that I valued and enjoyed and let the bad go away from the ones that I had negative experiences with. So my big thing is just like, how do I create the best possible experience for my players? And here are student athletes. And try to replicate the environment, the culture, the relationships that I valued so much as a player, on and off the field, and then just create an environment that fosters that. So I didn't draw from anyone specific, but I tried to take little bits from different experiences that I had along the way.
So there was never really just that one guy or that one person that you look to, and it's like this is kind of that model essentially because of how you were able to get into soccer.
When I first started, no. I mean, my first club coach, I think everybody has that first coach that they really just enjoyed being with. Peter Schaller, I'll give him a shout out. He's over on the West Coast, still coaching collegiately. He was someone who really valued us as players when we were like, I don't know, like U12, U10. And so having him as someone who taught us a bunch of stuff, he was British. So we thought, okay, this guy's coming from over there. He had
Knows what he's
been with
talking about.
Sunderland, all this stuff. But I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember a whole lot from like his coaching as much as how he treated us as people. And then in terms of like people that I look to emulate now, Klopp's passion is definitely there. And then Guardiola's, creativity. And then I'd even throw in, even though I'm not the hugest fan of him, Jose Mourinho's ability to just frustrate other teams. I think those three guys, the last three I mentioned, all have something, a lot of some things, but all have particular things that I like to draw upon now. But it took me a while to really like learn the intricacies of who they were, reading biographies, things like that, to understand not just what they were doing, but why.
Right. That's funny because like with all three of them, they're so different. With Klopp, you think of kind of that culture aspect, that team environment. You saw it at Dortmund before he eventually moved on to Liverpool. And then, with Guardiola, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is tactics and tiki taka football and everything like that. And then with Jose Mourinho, it's like, well, I guess just it's like the conference mic bomb essentially. And then, as you said, frustrating teams, frustrating
Mhm.
his own team. But I
Yeah.
mean, to his credit, when he does win, he does win. Now, obviously, with Spurs, we'll see what will happen. But they're all three, I guess, different coaching, at least from what we know of them in the media.
Yeah. And I think that in general, the best coaches try to learn from every experience that they have, or every relationship that they have. And I even just give a shout out here to the coaches we have on staff, like all the sports. This corona stuff has been really difficult for everybody. But one of the unexpected positive things that came from it is just the amount of time we had to spend on Zoom, and the amount of time we had to try to spend like asking each other, what are you doing as a football coach, what are you doing as a volleyball coach, and getting to learn from each other of what works, what doesn't, how to adapt. I just feel like I've grown a ton as a person and a coach since I've been on this staff. So I think that whether someone coaches the same sport as you or not, you can learn from it. And same thing with those three professional coaches we had mentioned.
So you mentioned the kind of with the Zoom meetings. I remember we talked. It's like hard to really, I guess, get your culture to be what you want it to be, or kind of get the team where you want it to be, especially now, transitioning from the former coach into you now. And, you, like you said, you were hired in December, and really you only had like what, 2 months, 2.5 months really from that time, or maybe three, before Corona actually, hit really hard and everything kind of went into lockdown. So how have you, I know you mentioned you've been talking to the other coaches. What's one takeaway I think that you could give of how you were able to kind of bring your team together, even though you were on Zoom mostly?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing is I wanted them to get a feel for me as a person. Um, and I met them right before they all left for winter break. So I was like, hey, how's it going? See you in 3 weeks. Um, and so early on, just trying to really establish, like, okay, like, what is this guy going to be about?
Right.
What is our team going to be about? Do I even want to be involved in that? Is what was going through some of those guys' minds. And so I've tried to have an open door policy in my office as often as possible. We're getting pulled all kinds of directions, but let them know that it's okay to come to me and just hang out if that's what they want to do. If they've got life stuff going on, that's fine. If they have stuff they disagree with me about, as long as we can have a respectful conversation, I want to hear their opinion. Because for me, it's best opinion, best idea in the room is what should win, whether it's coming from a coach, assistant coach, athletic trainer, player, whatever it may be. So I think that the big focus for me coming in was just um, letting them know how I go about things and letting them know that, like, for us to be successful, it has to be collaborative. And I think that bled into our team Zoom calls over the summer, allowing us to have everybody kind of bought in a way that I haven't had before, to be honest.
It works perfectly because I have a quote from you on Tuesday when we were talking. It says, "Trust goes hand in hand with culture." And you had mentioned to me multiple times, trust, being able to trust you, and as you just said, being able to go to you, and it's not just I'm the head coach. What I say goes. Well, like whatever I want to do goes. It's at that team effort. So you feel like being able to instill in your players that, hey, listen, I don't care what it is that you want to come talk to me about. You like you said, the open door policy. As long as there's trust here, we're going to be able to do what we need to do.
Yeah, I think that that's the foundation of any success is trust. I think it comes through relationships, whether that's a coach to player, player to player, or otherwise. So unfortunately, like just with this fall, everything's been so hectic and chaotic. We didn't have the preseason that normally would be a lot of team building type stuff. Even it's just having a barbecue or having a team retreat. So we've been really trying to get used to each other on the fly. Because even the guys who were here this spring, they only got maybe 6 weeks of training with me, maybe. And so it's a whole new team to me, to each other. And so we're just really working on how do we get used to each other on and off the field. And I will say, like, this is a phenomenal group of guys. I think that's cliche to say,
Right.
but like, it really is. It's a group that I feel really comfortable with bringing other people into in the future in terms of recruiting. And yeah, I think that if they know that someone is for them as a coach, I think that they're willing to listen and willing to respect and respond. And same thing in terms of their teammates and trusting them. So my focus is just to make sure I do my work, make sure I do my prep, and give them a reason to trust me.
Do you think, I know that, I guess you mentioned the cliche of, the statement, phenomenal team, these are great guys, like stuff that you hear a bunch of coaches say. Do you think that you're not necessarily a strict, because there's always the, I guess, bad vibe around people saying that they're players coaches, or the
Hmm.
media saying that someone's a players coach. Would you say that maybe like you embody some of those things where your players can come to you, but at the same time it's still, when we're on the field we need to make sure that we're being respectful and doing what we need to do, rather than just like messing around in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I try to go about things as professional as possible, just overall. I would say I'm definitely a player's coach because, I mean, just with the variety of things that have been going on, like they need people to advocate for them. And some of them have come from another school, some of them this is their first time in college, and that's part of how I view my role is my role is to help them with whatever they need, whether it's a class that they need to find a tutor, whether it's financial aid, figuring out how to navigate that because maybe they're the first in their family to go to college. And so I want them, like I said before, I want them to have the best possible experience. And it's meant a lot of extra logistical stuff this year, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But I think that that's a huge part of our job as coaches in general is you see the stuff on the field, but the administrative piece is maybe even like 70 or 80% of the work. But there is a switch that has to be flipped as we transition from talking off the field and joking around and whatever it may be to what we're trying to accomplish on the field. They know that I'm serious with what we're doing and that we have goals this year, high goals compared to probably what other people think of us. And so I believe 100% you can be both a player coach or players coach, as well as hold people to the highest possible standards on the field.
With your players, with anything that's going on, like if they need you desperately, like 1 o'clock in the morning or something, you're awake, like you're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one time this preseason that I knew I needed to sleep, I made sure that they had four other people that they could reach out to, and that my roommate, the women's coach Logan, that they all had his number in case there was an emergency and they really needed me. There was just one night where I was just worn out
Right.
and I needed a little bit of extra sleep. But even in those cases, like if it's really an emergency or if it's really something that just like needs to get addressed, I'll forego some sleep for that.
You so with Logan, you mentioned you guys were at CCU together. You guys are roommates. Do you feel like, and even after talking to him when I talked to him a few weeks ago and talking to you Tuesday and now, it seems, at least to me, maybe I might be a little bit wrong, that you guys do share some of the same philosophies in terms of the team. Would you agree? And like how you approach the team?
Yeah, I think culture wise and standards wise, absolutely. But I think the way we go about it is extremely different because we have very different personalities. But I think that's also a cool thing because I think we're able to learn from each other and grow as a result. Tactically, we're very different, even if there may even be some similarities formation wise. But I think that we both really prioritize being there for our players as much as possible, and trying to create a culture and an environment where people can succeed. I like to joke with him and call him the fun coach, because it bothers him. But he may do things a little bit different, but that's also just the nature of not just our personalities, but our team's dynamics.
Right.
And as good coaches, we would want to adjust to what the dynamics of our team are, whether it's a young men's team or young women's team, whether it's even just a younger team like a U10 team. Like we have to adapt. We can't just do a one size fits all. And I think that he's done an awesome job of that since he's been here. And I think most of the coaches here, I mean, actually, I think all of the coaches here do an awesome job of like just creating that culture within their teams that they feel valued. And I think that's one of the most important things for us to do for these college students is that they know that they're not just here as an athlete. Maybe that's why they chose this school. It's probably why we got in contact with them.
Right.
But they know that their value isn't only through athletics, like that there's a lot more than that, that they're a whole person, whether we're talking about academic stuff or even just like who they are. So yeah, I think that Logan and I have some similarities, but there's also some big differences as well, and I think we're better because of it.
We talked on Tuesday about, I asked you how you felt with the kind of flashy skill moves type of thing, and I mentioned to you that where I work, I've seen kind of like kids where they will do a lot of flashy skills, they'll do everything that they need to do to get past the person and they can't finish. One of the things that you mentioned to me was that you feel like you're a lot more open in the final third and that you like to kind of let your players do what they need to do as long as they can be able to get to that end goal in the final third. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that there's a few pieces to it. For us, our team is from all over the world. We have guys from everywhere from Serbia to Jamaica to California. Like we got guys from all over the place, and everybody's got different backgrounds, whether it's cultural background, soccer background, otherwise. And for me as a coach, I feel like my players play best when they know what's expected of them and then they have the freedom to express themselves as a result. I mean, I think it's called the beautiful game for a reason. And I don't think it's called the game that you just put a bunch of structure around and
Right.
box people in. And for some people, they need the structure to make the most out of it and enjoy it the most. And I have a lot of structure. I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, I want those guys who are maybe a little more technical, a little more crafty, um, to be able to express themselves and enjoy the game in that way. I played defense growing up. That's where I was most effective. So I liked frustrating those guys. But every defender at their heart thinks that they're a better offensive player than they are and wishes they were a forward. So I can definitely like respect and value that. And I've seen players under me play the best when they have a little bit of freedom. As long as they know what the general expectations are and they work within the team system, I want guys to be themselves. I don't want them to try to be somebody different. I may want them to adjust their thinking a little bit, but I want them to play with their personality and with their character.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. Like one of the main things that I think people take away, although with football, or a lot of people prefer, like you say, American football, and then football for soccer, but just here that's not how that works. But like with football, one of the main things is kind of when people talk about like Bill Belichick, it's always, don't tell me what a player can't do, tell me what a player can do, and let
Yep.
me work on those strengths. Would you take that same thing away? Like, I want to work on what you're good at, and then we can also, like, I want what this player can do, and also we can work on what he can't do on the back end.
Yeah, Bill Belichick's one of my favorite coaches for that reason. I think he's great at creating, maybe not so much culture, like he creates expectations, but I think that he has like an incredible eye, and his staff, because his staff is phenomenal as well, at just identifying who can do what. And I think as coaches, our role in general is how do we put our players in the best position to succeed? For some, that's maximizing a strength. For others, it's minimizing a weakness. But in general, like I think that's something that he does better than pretty much anybody, and I think that's why he's had so much success, or at least a big part of it.
I feel like for that aspect, he's just so laser focused and on everything.
Hmm.
And now we're seeing a little bit of a difference, like in terms of the media eyes. But everyone knows Bill Belichick, and I guess you could even throw like Nick Saban in there because they're
Hmm.
almost identical people.
Yeah.
Where it's always, what's the focus at hand, do your job mantra, everything like that. Um, you talked about how you played in defense when you were younger. Were you? I don't think I had asked you this on Tuesday. Were you a center back, fullback?
It depended on the team that I played on. Typically gravitated more towards the center because for me I was always extremely vocal, as a leader and as a captain, as just a player. And in high school I played as a sweeper. In college I played a little bit as an outside back, but more as a center back, just because for me it was always that organizational piece. If I could get people to be where I needed them to be based off of my support angles, etc., then we were going to succeed as a team. But if I was further away or if I was quiet, the team was less organized. So that's why for my guys, I kind of harp on them in terms of the communication at times, because you don't know what you're missing until you've experienced it. And that's not, just talking myself up as a communicator on the field, but it's intimidating to play against teams that are just nonstop talking and are
Right.
organized, and you see it with how they move, how they shift. And that's the standard we want here.
Being able to frustrate players
Hmm.
at all costs. You mentioned me like a story to me that when you were a kid, like when you're, I guess not even a kid, 15 years old, teenager, um, that you started your own club essentially, and that you went through the process of doing everything there. Could you expand on that here and what you did, how it went about it?
Yeah, again, I think it points back to kind of the relationships aspect for me. Basically, I had played with a particular club in my hometown growing up, and my freshman year of high school, I played, and the prices had gone up, and we went through four coaches in one season, and none of my friends from my high school could play, primarily due to the cost. And so for me, I wanted to play with my friends. I knew they were good enough, and I wanted our high school team to get better as a result too. And so essentially, I looked for a local club that maybe didn't have a team our age, maybe a smaller club that, if they would be willing, they would let us play under their name. We'd pay for jerseys, we'd do our fundraisers. We had a field that we could practice at, actually. And yeah, so I was able to identify two clubs over 3 years that let us do that. And was able to get a ton of guys to play, and made our high school team better. And honestly, just the biggest thing was like we were able to play together, enjoy it. And by the time that I was graduating, like that last summer before college, most of the guys from my previous club team had joined us. And then we went back and played the tournament hosted by my previous club, and we beat that team in the final. And that was the last memory I had of high school soccer, so to speak, before I left for college. But it was
That's
about giving
huge.
opportunity to people, which is a huge part of what we do here. And it was about valuing those relationships and just wanting to play together.
That's huge. I don't even think we got into that on on Tuesday. So you beat your, like, the essentially the club that was charging a lot to with your club that you had pretty much just started essentially in
Yes.
like their tournament.
Yep. That was how we finished things off.
That's a great end.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
a
we had a rough first year, don't get me wrong. I think we may have lost most of our games, just with some injuries to people and numbers going down. But our second year, we won the league, and the third year, we won the league, and then won some tournaments along the way. So to win that tournament at the end was definitely sweet. And it was just kind of a merging for me of my high school teammates, my club teammates. I mean, we'd all grown up playing with or against each other anyway, so we knew each other, and to get to do that together as kind of a final send off was really special.
So I like to do this with the podcast I record on my own and with my co-host just because it's fun. It's like bring a final question, try to catch the person off guard and see what you can get out of it. And this is going to be related more towards just soccer in general. At first I was pondering if you had to build a front three, but I think I'm just going to go if you had to pick three players or four players, like a midfielder, a defender, an attacker, and a keeper that are currently playing right now in world soccer. Who would you pick?
For my team,
Yeah.
oh man, dang. Without trying to stall too long here, the first person that pops into my mind in terms of midfield is De Bruyne, which I mean he doesn't really have a position anymore because he's
Yeah.
everywhere. But I think the way he sees the game and impacts it like two passes ahead is phenomenal. Um, in terms of defenders, oh man, you got me on this one. This is good. Uh,
I'm surprised with the Liverpool bias that you don't go with Van Dijk immediately off the
oh,
rip.
I know that was probably Logan's answer. No, I'll go to goalkeepers. Neuer's the easy one for me just because I love what he does with his feet. I love the command he has over his team. And I know people have kind of criticized him a little bit in the last couple of years because there's other people that have popped up and done well. But I think he commands the game, has great hands, and with the way the game is played now in terms of using your feet, like he's right up there with anybody else. Um, and then I'll go to defender because I got to work forward now. I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna go with an old school guy of Puyol, just because like he played harder than anybody. He was super fun to watch. Definitely a different style, but also he could be a good distributor. But he was just who popped into my head. And then we got De Bruyne at midfield, and I guess up top. Um, hmm, I just Messi's too much fun to watch not to pick him. Like he's not my favorite player, don't get me wrong, but like he's so phenomenal. Like you just have to respect it.
Yeah, I'm more of a, I guess I like Ronaldo, except for all the times that he broke my heart against Bayern. Like just more than I do like Messi, but it's just I remember people were asking me, "Oh, are you scared to face Barcelona?" And I was like, "Not really. Like I expect to win, but
Hmm.
if Lionel Messi turns into Lionel Messi, then we're screwed."
Yeah,
Thankfully, that didn't happen, but yeah, I mean, he's
yeah. I think part of the reason that was hard for me to answer is like like I said, I didn't grow up getting to watch soccer on TV or anything. Um, and so I tend to gravitate towards coaches more than players and systems more than individual
who would the
players.
coach be then for that team?
You gotta make me choose between Guardiola and Klopp. I got I by the smallest of margins, Guardiola. I love him and Klopp though. I think that each of them in their own ways are just so phenomenal. But yeah, it's interesting that kind of slowed me down a little bit because I had to pick players rather than coaches.
Yeah, it's a fun. I like it just because usually I do it like I have my Dolphins podcast, so it's about Dolphin stuff. I'll bring up a random stat from 1987 or
Hmm.
something. But it's interesting because you really have to think about certain things, and that's why I went more with like that four kind of player basis instead of the attacking three because like for a lot of people, especially I mean, if you want to pick an attacking three, the best that we've seen in the past couple of years is like MSN, like with Messi,
Hmm.
Suarez, and Neymar. It's like that's one of the easiest choices you could do just because I think it was 2015 that they won the treble and they just dominated
Yeah,
everybody they played.
yeah, yeah. Easy
So
call.
thank you for coming. Thank
Yeah,
you for being the inaugural, I guess, guest on and being able to make your time out of your day to be here.
yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. We're looking forward to having a season where we're able to surprise a lot of people. The guys have been putting in a ton of work, being really flexible with a lot of challenges, and I'm just excited to see them get rewarded for all of what they've been doing the last few weeks and the last 6 months.
And your first game is
We play at Ave Maria on September 5th, and then our first home game is September 23rd against St. Thomas.
so you're going next Saturday essentially,
Yeah, yeah,
all full go.
yep.
and ready to surprise some people. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. We will see you guys the next time that we have somebody on the podcast. This has been the Into the Den podcast. Again, I'm sports information intern Kai Chen Chisholm, and thank you guys so much for listening.